Every year, for as long as anyone could remember, something strange happened in the small New England town of Ashwood. Every January, one of the grand old Victorian mansions on the hill would mysteriously catch fire. Fire crews would rush to the scene, but when they arrived, the building was already completely engulfed in flames. They would fight all day to put it out, only for it to magically reignite itself every night. This went on for weeks until the building was completely destroyed. But then something even weirder happened, because every February, the exact same house would just be rebuilt, brick by brick. The residents would return, claiming that nothing had ever happened, that no fire had consumed their home, and the townspeople, baffled and creeped out, would simply let them be. It didn't make any sense. Why would an entire house rebuild itself? And how could everyone in it forget having survived a literal inferno? It was baffling and terrifying, and to this day, no one has been able to explain it. Hello, I'm here to tell you about a house that refused to burn. In 1898, Ashwood was a quiet village in rural New England. With a population of just under 3,000, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Life was peaceful. The economy was stable, and the worst thing that usually happened was if someone left their cow loose in Mrs. Peabody's prize-winning petunias. But in January of that year, a series of bizarre events shook the town to its core. On the evening of January 7th, a fire broke out at the grand old Victorian mansion on Hemlock Hill. Flames erupted through the roof and spread rapidly through the structure. Fire crews were dispatched, but when they arrived, the mansion was already ablaze. All they could do was stand by and watch as it burned. For the next 2 weeks, the house burned. Day after day, week after week. It was a spectacle that drew crowds from surrounding towns. People would come from miles around to watch the mansion burn and then rebuild itself, brick by brick, person by person. But there was no explanation for it. The local priest claimed it was a miracle. The local doctor claimed it was mass hysteria, but most people simply didn't want to believe what they were seeing. Then, in the middle of the night, a storm rolled in. Lightning cracked and thunder roared, shaking the very foundations of the house. And as the first rays of sunlight peeked over the horizon, something incredible happened. The house was gone. The land was bare. There wasn't even a foundation left. As far as anyone could tell, there had never been a house there at all. The townspeople were stunned. What had happened to the house? Where had it gone? And why did it seem like they couldn't remember it ever being there? These questions plagued the townspeople for years. Some moved away, unable to bear the memory of what had happened. Others stayed, determined to uncover the truth. One woman, however, remained resolute. Her name was Eleanor Vance, and she was a journalist. She had come to Ashwood to write a story about the mysterious house, but now she was determined to find out what had really happened. She scoured old records, interviewed longtime residents, and searched for clues. But the more she learned, the more confused she became. There were rumors that the house had been haunted, that it was cursed, or that it was the center of a dark secret. But these were just stories. There was no evidence to support them. Then, as a last resort, she went to see the local priest, Father Michael, who had been in Ashwood for many years. He listened patiently as Eleanor told him everything she had learned, and then he finally spoke. "I believe," he said slowly, "that this house is the key to unlocking the mystery." He explained that the house had been built by a wealthy couple, Thomas and Elizabeth Blackwood, who had made their money in trade. But they were known for being cruel and greedy. They exploited their workers and cheated their customers. And when they died, they left behind a legacy of pain and suffering. "I think," Father Michael continued, "that this house is a vessel for their souls. They're trapped here, unable to move on because of the pain they caused while they were alive." Eleanor was skeptical, but she had nothing to lose. So she decided to try the priest's theory. She went back to the house, which had been rebuilt after the fire, and waited until nightfall. Just as the clock struck 12, she heard a noise in the attic above her head. She got up and started to investigate. As she climbed the stairs, she could hear voices whispering her name. Then she saw something that made her blood run cold. Standing in front of her were Thomas and Elizabeth Blackwood. They were gaunt and pale, with eyes that burned like hot coals. "Who are you?" Eleanor whispered, terrified. "We are the ones who live here," Thomas replied. "And you are trespassing." "I want to help you," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. "Help us," Elizabeth hissed, "by getting out of here." Then they lunged. Eleanor screamed and ran for the door. She could hear them close behind her, their voices echoing in her ears. She stumbled out into the night and ran as fast as she could. She didn't stop until she reached the safety of Father Michael's house. Shaking and sobbing, she told the priest what had happened. Together, they went back to the house and confronted Thomas and Elizabeth. The couple was furious, but they couldn't hurt Eleanor or Father Michael. In fact, they couldn't hurt anyone. They were trapped in the house, doomed to relive the same events over and over again. Each January, the house would catch fire, destroying the physical structure, but not the spiritual one. The couple's souls were bound to the house, and they would reset it every February. This was why no one could remember anything. Their minds were wiped clean. Each time they were reborn into a new reality. And so it went on for centuries. Every January, the house burned. Every February, it was rebuilt. And every March, the residents were reborn into a new life. Years passed, and the house became known as the Blackwood Manor. Those who lived in it came and went, but none remembered their previous lives. That was until Eleanor Vance arrived. She was the first person in centuries to remember what had happened before. She and Father Michael worked together to break the cycle, helping the lost souls move on to the afterlife. But it was a difficult task. The couple was deeply embedded in the house, and they weren't willing to let go without a fight. Thomas and Elizabeth used their powers to torment Eleanor and Father Michael, but they refused to give up. Finally, after months of work, they were able to break the cycle. The house burned one last time, and this time it didn't rebuild. The couple's souls were finally free. Ashwood was forever changed. The mystery of the house was solved, and the town could finally move on. But the story doesn't end there. You see, the house wasn't the only thing that was reset every year. The entire town of Ashwood was also affected. Every January, the town would burn, and every February, it would rebuild. The townspeople were reborn into a new reality, and they too had no memory of their previous lives. It was as if time itself was being rewritten every year, and no one was safe. Not even me. You see, I was born and raised in Ashwood. I grew up hearing the stories of the mysterious house and the strange things that happened there, but I never believed those stories until I experienced it for myself. When I was 10 years old, our house burned down. My parents and I barely escaped with our lives. We lost everything we owned, and we had to start over from scratch. But it wasn't until later that I realized what had really happened. You see, our house wasn't the only one that burned. Every single house in town burned that year. And every year after that, my family and I would wake up on February morning to find that our house had been rebuilt and our memories had been wiped clean. We had no memory of the fire or the struggle to rebuild. It was as if it had never happened. I've tried to escape, but it's no use. I'm trapped here with everyone else, doomed to relive the same events over and over again. I don't know how much longer I can take this. The fire is coming soon, and I don't want to burn again, but maybe, just maybe, if I can get the word out, maybe someone will come and save us. Maybe someone will set us free.